Professor, help us out here. What does this say?
The word here, Kappa Omicron Rho, it means the chief of what?
Right, the chief of what?
Buried for more than 1,500 years, a stunning discovery near the northern shores of the Sea of Galilee has left the world in shock. Archaeologists claim they have uncovered what may be Jesus' secret words to Peter, hidden beneath ancient ruins where he once walked and taught. The fragile inscriptions, written in a lost and forgotten language, contain mysterious phrases never recorded in the Bible. Were these the final words Jesus shared privately with Peter before his last days? And why were they hidden for so long? What exactly was found in this ancient fragment? Stay with us, because this revelation could forever change what we know about faith, history, and the words of Christ. Subscribe for more forgotten truths and archaeological revelations. The Mosaic beneath the mud. On the northern shore of the Sea of Galilee, not far from where the Jordan River enters the lake, a team of archaeologists began an excavation that would soon make history. The site looked empty at first. The shore was silent, the ground heavy with layers of mud that had built up over centuries of flooding. Many earlier surveys had given up on the area, calling it unworkable, but this new team believed something was waiting below. Local fishermen had long spoken of carved stones that appeared when the water level dropped, and the archaeologists wanted to know what lay beneath them. The dig began in the heat of summer. The air smelled of wet clay and salt. Workers scraped the surface slowly, their tools clicking through dense earth. For several days, they found nothing but mud, shells, and broken pottery. Then, on the fifth morning, a trowel struck something smooth and solid. The sound was sharper than stone. They widened the trench, clearing the surface by hand. A line of small tiles began to appear beneath the silt. The colors were faint at first, then brightened as the water washed away the dirt. Over the next 2 weeks, the team worked in sections, exposing more of the structure each day. What they uncovered was astonishing. Thick walls, defined corners, and a curved chamber at the eastern end, the kind of feature found only in ancient churches. According to their field notes, the exposed area measured about 1.5 dunams, large enough to fit hundreds of people. This was no simple chapel. It was a Byzantine church. When the conservators began washing the floor, the room came alive. The mosaic beneath was nearly perfect, its patterns sharp and colorful despite the centuries that had passed. Near the center, faint Greek letters emerged. A language specialist read them slowly, until the full line was clear. Peter, chief of the apostles and holder of the keys of heaven. For a long moment, no one spoke. The words were not a decoration. They were a proclamation set into the very heart of the floor. The letters were clean, the grout untouched, the surface unusually preserved. Some of the team believed the room had been sealed to protect it. Others warned against speculation until further tests confirmed it. Still, one thing was certain. The mosaic had been placed there with purpose. As the sun set, the crew covered the floor again to keep it safe. The lake shimmered quietly in the distance. They left the site that evening knowing they had found something far greater than a ruin. According to their notes, one question remained in every mind. What story did this mosaic belong to, and what kind of town had once surrounded it? To answer that, they would have to look back in time to a place long mentioned in Scripture, yet missing from the world's maps. The town that the Gospels lost. The team came to believe that the message hidden in the mosaic was pointing toward a single name, one that had echoed through Scripture for centuries: Bethsaida. According to the Gospels, this was the town that had once been home to Peter, Andrew, and Philip. It was here that Jesus first called his disciples and carried out many of his earliest miracles. And yet, somewhere along the long path of history, the town vanished. After the 1st century, its name slowly disappeared from every known written record. Floodwaters reshaped the northern edge of the Sea of Galilee, and the shoreline gradually shifted away from its original position. The town that had witnessed the dawn of faith was slowly swallowed by soil, time, and memory together. Pilgrims as early as the 4th century tried to locate it once more. They journeyed along the Galilean coast, relying only on stories and tradition, pointing to places where they believed Jesus had once walked. Some chose the wrong hills, others built small shrines, hoping they had found the right spot, but none of their claims endured. As the centuries passed, the town became less of a physical destination and more of an enduring mystery, a sacred presence hidden beneath layers of mud, reeds, and forgotten ground. By the 19th century, scholars revived the search with maps, measurements, and digging tools. Two main locations began to draw serious attention. One was Et Tel, a large mound nearly 2 kilometers inland. The other was El Araj, a low, flat area much closer to the water's edge. Each site gathered its own supporters and evidence, but neither could fully dismiss the other. Et Tel revealed strong Bronze Age remains, yet offered little material from the time of Jesus. El Araj, on the other hand, produced Roman-era pottery and hints of mosaic floors, but constant flooding made proper excavation difficult. The debate carried on for generations. Early 20th century surveys suggested that both places held ancient remains, but the discoveries were scattered and incomplete. Bethsaida remained lost, a town familiar to every reader of the Gospels, yet visible to no one. That story began to shift in 2016. A new international research team returned to El Araj, equipped with modern technology and a clear determination to answer the question once and for all. Through soil analysis and magnetic imaging, they detected dense shapes buried below the surface, signs of walls, roads, and building foundations. As they dug deeper, they uncovered pottery, glass fragments, and coins dating to the 1st century. Within months, entire structures slowly emerged from the mud. According to several archaeologists, the layers revealed not just a small settlement, but a thriving fishing village that matched perfectly with the time of Jesus. For the first time, archaeological evidence appeared to align with Scripture. Bethsaida, the town long lost in the Gospels, was beginning to re-emerge into the world, and the earth seemed ready to reveal even more than stone and walls. The church beneath the shoreline. The team continued digging deeper into the ground, fully expecting to uncover only small traces of an ancient village. They assumed they would come across a few collapsed walls, broken pottery fragments, or perhaps a short stretch of an old road. What emerged instead was something far more unexpected. Slowly, the layout of a large early Christian church from the Byzantine era began to reveal itself. With each passing day, one discovery naturally led to another. What first appeared to be a simple low wall soon connected to a series of rooms. Circular stone shapes were identified as column bases, still standing exactly where they had been placed centuries ago. By the end of the 3rd week, the team uncovered a curved chamber at the eastern end of the structure, the very spot where an altar would have stood in an ancient church. At that moment, there was no longer any doubt. This was clearly a church, not a house, storage building, or warehouse. Its scale astonished everyone. The floor extended far beyond the size of the small village chapels known from nearby settlements. The layout was orderly and symmetrical. The quality of construction was impressive. When conservators carefully cleaned the floor, They revealed mosaics made from tiny red, blue, and white stones, arranged in deliberate and elegant patterns. As sunlight touched the surface, the colors became even more vivid. This was clearly not a modest village prayer space. According to several archaeologists, it appeared to be a structure designed to welcome and serve large numbers of visitors. As excavation continued and more soil was removed, the team reached layers that predated the church itself. Beneath the church foundations, they uncovered evidence of a town dating back to the 1st century. Fishing hooks, net weights, and simple household pottery came to light. These objects closely matched the everyday tools used by families living in a fishing community. The discoveries suggested that a working settlement existed here long before the church was constructed. It became clear that the builders of the church had chosen this location intentionally, rather than by accident. Historical writings helped the researchers place their findings into a broader context. An 8th-century pilgrim named Willibald had written about a church dedicated to the apostles near the Sea of Galilee. He described it as standing on the site where the homes of Peter and Andrew once stood. For many years, scholars dismissed this account, believing it sounded more like legend than fact. Yet at El Araj, the archaeological evidence matched many details of Willibald's description. The site included guest rooms. Remains of a bathhouse were uncovered. There was also a large courtyard suitable for gathering travelers and pilgrims. According to field reports, this marked the first time the written record and physical evidence aligned so closely. By this stage, the team felt as though they were uncovering a story told in layers. First came a Roman-period fishing town. Later, a Christian community built a shrine directly above it. This choice followed a familiar pattern, as early Christians often constructed buildings over places they wished to honor. Some members of the team believed the church was built to preserve the memory of the apostles themselves. Others urged caution, saying more evidence was needed before making such a claim. Still, everyone agreed that the location was carefully chosen and far from random. One important question remained unanswered. Why had this specific site been selected with such deliberate care? The answer, they soon realized, was waiting beneath their feet, a message carved in stone and buried deep within the very center of the floor. The inscription that spoke through stone. The inscription that spoke from the stone lay at the very center of the church's main hall. This central space is known as the nave, the broad open area where worshippers once stood during services. At its heart was a circular border made of small, brightly colored tiles, enclosing a smooth panel filled with text. The conservators worked carefully, clearing the surface little by little using soft brushes and water. Slowly, letter after letter, the words emerged and seemed to come alive again. The team gathered in a half-circle around the panel as a Greek language specialist read the inscription aloud in a calm, steady voice. The inscription opened with what appeared to be a typical dedication. It credited the work to a man named Constantine and described him as a servant of Christ. This kind of phrasing is common in church floor mosaics from that historical period. Then the wording shifted. It honored Peter as the leader of the apostles and as the bearer of the keys. Everyone present immediately recognized the reference. It echoed a passage familiar to many believers from the Gospel of Matthew. However, the final line brought everything to a halt. The inscription spoke of the keys of the heavenly spheres. The phrase felt unusual and unexpected. According to the epigraphers working at the site, this specific wording does not appear in any known manuscript of the Bible. Linguists on the team noted that the expression sounded ancient and symbolic. It suggested an understanding of heaven as layered or divided into realms. Later, some scholars involved in the discussion proposed that the wording might reflect an old Aramaic phrase used by early believers when speaking about God's authority. They were careful to emphasize that this idea remained a possibility rather than a proven conclusion. They explained that such language could have entered Greek through local preaching traditions long before it was ever committed to writing. The team examined the lettering more closely. The carving was precise. The angles were sharp and deliberate. There were no visible corrections or spacing errors in the design. Each letter stood at the same height. This was clearly not rushed work done by a local village craftsman. It appeared to be a text created with intention and importance in mind. Field notes pointed out that the lines were so crisp that the mosaic floor must have been protected early in its history. This could explain why the surface showed so little wear. Others on the team cautioned that only laboratory testing could determine how long the floor had remained exposed before it was eventually buried. Interpreting the meaning of the words proved to be the greatest challenge. If the phrase preserved a local saying, then the mosaic might contain an echo of a teaching that never made its way into the written Gospels. Some members of the team felt a surge of excitement, while others felt unease. A few quietly admitted that such an interpretation could provoke strong reactions from multiple directions. According to summaries from later briefings, the project leaders chose their words very carefully. They stated that the inscription expands known language, but they stopped short of claiming that it alters Scripture itself. Even without reaching firm conclusions, the impact was immediate. The site transformed from an intriguing church ruin into a place with the potential to influence debates about Peter's role and about how early Christians remembered and transmitted the words of Jesus. The letters did not seem merely decorative. They felt like a deliberate message set into the floor for future generations to discover. To understand why anyone would embed such a statement in stone, researchers began to focus on the people who built this sanctuary and on the beliefs that guided their hands. The faith that remembered where words fell. The faith that remembered where words once fell took shape long before written guides existed. In the earliest centuries of Christianity, believers did not rely on maps or detailed texts to locate sacred places. Instead, they trusted memory. They built structures where stories said holy moments had occurred. Churches rose above caves, springs, and hills where people believed Jesus or his followers had once stood or spoken. This practice was not based on superstition. It was a deliberate way to preserve those moments in stone. The builders of these early sanctuaries viewed themselves as caretakers of memory, not as inventors creating something new across the landscape of the Holy Land. That same way of thinking shaped the geography of faith itself. The Church of the Nativity in Bethlehem was constructed over a cave believed to mark the place of Christ's birth. The Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem stood above the hill where tradition held that he was crucified and buried. In Nazareth, the Church of the Annunciation honored the location where the angel was said to have spoken to Mary. None of these places were chosen by chance. They were selected by generations who still carried living memories, passed down through families, travelers, and tightly connected local communities. The church uncovered at El Araj appeared to follow that very same pattern. Its builders selected ground that earlier generations had already recognized as sacred. They added guest rooms, a baptistry, and a broad central hall for worship. According to excavation reports, these elements are typical of pilgrimage centers designed to receive travelers who came to pray, reflect, or seek healing. Every part of the structure pointed toward remembrance. Nothing in the design suggested novelty or personal expression. The intention was not to invent meaning, but to protect something the builders already believed had taken place there. Some archaeologists believe the site represents an effort to keep a spoken memory alive. The land beneath the basilica may have been linked to moments from Jesus' ministry. From this perspective, the very shape and layout of the building functioned as a statement. This is where the words once fell. The builders were not guarding an abstract idea, but a voice they believed had spoken upon that soil. In this view, Peter was more than a figure honored in stone. He was the guardian of a promise spoken directly by Christ. The floor mosaic that named him the chief of the apostles may not have been merely decorative. It may have served as a coded reminder of a conversation that early followers refused to let fade. Some scholars remain cautious. They argue that without written confirmation, absolute certainty is impossible. Yet even they agree that the combined evidence of architecture, inscription, and location points to intentional preservation. The people who raised this church were not creating history. They were carrying something forward. And according to recent studies, what they preserved may have been more than a title or a name. It may have been the very words Jesus once spoke to Peter. When epigraphers cleaned the final ring of the mosaic, faint letters emerged that no one had noticed before, and the meaning changed completely. The keys, the kingdom, and the hidden words. The last stage of cleaning began as a routine process. Conservators first photographed the floor using standard lighting. After that, the technical team set up infrared imaging to examine the surface for traces invisible to the naked eye. According to the field log, the camera revealed a thin band of writing circling the main inscription. Time had worn it down so badly that it was nearly impossible to see. Under infrared light, shapes that once looked like discoloration began to resolve into actual letters carved into the stone. The room fell silent. One epigrapher carefully traced the circular text onto a digital tablet, while another specialist slowly read the letters out loud. Parts of the line were missing, but enough survived to reconstruct the sentence with confidence. After several scans and checks, the team recorded their reconstruction in the notebook. It read, "He said to him, 'Guard my house, for I go to prepare the heavens.'" The wording did not match any known verse. The tone felt intimate, almost conversational, like a personal instruction rather than a formal proclamation. Translators examined the grammar closely. They observed that the rhythm did not resemble later Greek styles. Instead, it flowed like a much older pattern of speech. Several scholars on the call noted that the phrasing matched early Aramaic structures. They suggested it might preserve a local memory that was later rendered into Greek for the mosaic. They were careful to stress that this remained a hypothesis, not definitive proof. Other scholars urged restraint and emphasized the need for further testing and peer review. The sentence structure itself drew intense attention. It sounded like a continuation of Matthew 16:19, where Jesus gives Peter the keys to the kingdom of heaven. Here, the idea appeared to move forward with two clear instructions: "Guard my house," and "I go to prepare the heavens." If the reconstruction is correct, the first command points directly to Peter's responsibility on earth. It reads like a charge to protect and oversee the community of believers. The second phrase suggests Christ's work in the heavenly realm, preparing what lies above while Peter stands watch below. Some scholars said this pairing hints at a shared mission, linking earth and heaven through coordinated roles. The emotional reaction was immediate and intense. Some team members felt stunned. Others worried about how such a discovery would be received beyond the site. According to site reports, the directors decided to describe the inscription carefully, calling it an early local tradition that preserves an expanded version of a familiar promise. They avoided labeling it as new scripture. They also avoided presenting it as a final or settled conclusion. Even with measured language, the implications were powerful. If the inscription preserves an early saying remembered in Galilee, then this mosaic would represent the first archaeological artifact carrying a direct line spoken by Jesus to Peter. Some experts believe the line reshapes how Peter's role is understood. He is no longer only the gatekeeper who binds and looses. He becomes a steward entrusted with guarding the household of faith, while Christ completes the work of preparation in heaven. The team resealed the floor to protect it and sent detailed images to external reviewers. Within days, word of the discovery spread beyond the excavation site. As the story traveled, debates reignited in seminaries and pulpits alike. What did these words mean for long-held teachings about Peter, the apostle who, according to this inscription, never let go of the keys?